The disgusting tongue of the monster was cut off by the man. The man pressed the injured monster to the ground and went on a frenzy of slashing. The woman who had just been astonished was still in shock. When the monster was already taken care of, the battle outside the base intensified, and the soldiers inside the base were being killed and injured. And all of this started with the woman who had just been captured. Her name was Mary, and she was a fighter pilot from the United States. On that day, she was assigned to a patrol mission in Afghanistan. Little did she know that while passing through a canyon, their aircraft was hit by terrorists, causing it to lose control and crash towards the ground. Left with no other choice, Mary and her companion had to eject from the aircraft. However, the terrorists had no intention of letting them go. They tracked them to the landing site, and as Mary's comrade took out his gun to fight back, he was shot in the shoulder and fell to the ground. Mary played dead and waited for the terrorists to approach. Mary used the terrorist's body as a shield. She eliminated each enemy that came at her, but the enemy reinforcements arrived quickly. Mary picked up an AK from the ground and fought while retreating, but she saw more and more terrorists gathering. Outnumbered, Mary started to show signs of exhaustion. Just as Mary was reaching her limit, a missile was launched towards her. The missile exploded, blowing open the entrance to a mine shaft behind Mary. Without thinking twice, she immediately ran inside to take cover. The inside of the mine shaft was extremely dark, and ahead of Mary was a deep abyss. She threw down a flare, and it descended into the darkness. The pursuers behind Mary persisted in chasing her, and she had no time to worry about the danger. She climbed down the ladder along the wall until she reached the bottom. Only then did she realize that this place was not a mine shaft at all, but a secret laboratory left behind from the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Are there any horrifying things here? Mary was unaware. Soon, the terrorists came down the stairs. Mary hurriedly looked for a place to hide. However, she unintentionally stumbled into an office. She discovered a pile of documents related to human experiments. At the same time, she also found a recording pen on the desk. Mary casually put it in her pocket. The terrorists appeared at that moment. In her panic, Mary hid inside the laboratory. The terrorists turned on the lights in the room. They saw several petri dishes with human-like creatures inside. Mary used a flanking tactic to launch a surprise attack from behind. She took down one of the terrorists. The remaining terrorists noticed, and started shooting wildly at Mary. Mary fled through the narrow laboratory. She was unharmed, but the terrorists outnumbered her. Unable to hold her ground, Mary escaped into the sewer temporarily. The terrorists quickly pursued her. They completely failed to notice that the human-like creature in the shattered petri dish had revived. The last member of the terrorist group was captured, and killed on the spot. Mary climbed out of the sewer, and took the opportunity to launch a surprise attack. She killed one person, and seized the enemy's gun. Mary occupied a favorable position. She eliminated all the enemies who caught up with her. Then she climbed back up the wall stairs to the surface. She didn't expect the monster to chase after her closely. Frightened by the monster, Mary hurriedly rushed out of the mine. She used an iron door to block the monster. The monster roared, and opened its bloody mouth, trying to break free. Mary turned around, and fiercely attacked, driving it back. She locked the door. Unexpectedly, when she turned around, she encountered a terrorist lurking at the door. However, the terrorist, frightened by the monster, turned and ran away. Mary staggered away from that place. She arrived on a main road. Mary happened to encounter soldiers who were searching for her. In this way, Mary was taken back to the base by them. The next day, Mary informed the commanding officer Chris about the situation in the laboratory. No matter how Mary explained, Chris didn't believe her at all. Even if she handed over the recording pen, Chris still chose not to believe. Mary was extremely helpless. In fact, Chris had a reason for doing so. He had received orders to evacuate the area. Chris didn't want to complicate matters. Mary left the tent in anger. At that moment, the patrol member who was outside captured the escaped terrorist Abraham from last night. He remained silent during the interrogation. Mary encountered Sergeant Miles outside. Miles was a kind-hearted person. Miles explained the situation at the base to Mary. When Mary escaped, she was injured in the abdomen by the monster. Mary went to the medical room for treatment. Coincidentally, Abraham was also there. Mary informed the medic about the monster. After examining the wound, the doctor seemed to believe what she said, as Mary's injuries didn't appear to be caused by humans. At that moment, Miles rushed over. He had just checked the satellite images, and didn't find any evidence of the so-called mine entrance. Mary insisted that it must exist. Suddenly, Abraham spoke, and acknowledged Mary's statement. Subsequently, Abraham informed them about what he knew. The mine is a secret laboratory left behind by the former Soviet Union. Indeed, there are terrifying monsters inside the mine. Everyone listened with a pensive expression. Meanwhile, in that laboratory, more and more monsters broke free from the containment vessels, and escaped. A crisis is about to unfold. As time flew by and night fell, a soldier was abducted by the monsters while on duty. The base instantly descended into chaos. These monsters not only possess incredible speed, but also have bodies impervious to weapons. Many team members were ruthlessly killed by the monsters. Before they could even get a good look at their appearance, a monster sneaked into Chris's tent, and he quickly drew his gun and fired. However, the small handgun was ineffective against the monster. He took out a tremendously powerful shotgun and managed to bring it down with great difficulty. On the other side, another monster broke into the medical room. Mary approached with a knife, but was completely outmatched. She was thrown onto the bed by the monster, which extended a long tongue from its mouth, and wrapped it around Mary's neck. At this critical moment, Abraham broke free from his restraints, grabbed a knife, and severed the monster's tongue. He saved Mary and killed the monster in the process. Meanwhile, the battle outside raged on. Seeing their teammates suffering heavy casualties, Mary and the others made a quick decision to seek refuge in the armory. Noticing that their commanding officer Chris was not with the main force, Miles hurriedly took the medic with him to check on the situation. At that moment, Chris was engaged in a fierce battle with a monster. He grabbed a baseball bat and smashed the creature's head. Finally, the medic, together with the exhausted Chris, arrived at the entrance of the armory. In the last second before the monsters pounced, they rushed in with the rest of the troops, and found temporary safety. Here, Abraham recounted the origin of the monsters once again. The crowd was extremely indignant, wondering what the former Soviet Union had done here. When daylight came, they cautiously ventured outside, only to find that the monsters were nowhere to be seen. Instead of letting their guard down, everyone became even more vigilant. Just then, someone discovered a monster's corpse from behind the base. The crowd carried it back to the medical room, finally getting a full view of the creature, which was truly hideous. The medic used tools to dissect the monster's body, and examined its internal structure, only to discover that the creature seemed to be something other than human. There were genes from other organisms inside the monster, as it lacked many human organs. At that moment, Chris spoke and apologized to Mary, admitting that he should have believed her from the beginning. It turned out that last night, Chris had informed his superiors about the situation here, and he received information in return from them. There is indeed a secret laboratory in this area. The laboratory is responsible for creating bioengineered human soldiers. Several decades ago, there was an unidentified object that crashed in a certain location in these mountains, and that unknown life form was an alien spacecraft. The Soviet Union immediately sent personnel to investigate, and they extracted alien DNA, and combined it with human DNA, thus creating these monsters. Later, the Soviet Union left Afghanistan without destroying the laboratory, leaving it behind in this land. Once everyone understood these things, someone suggested leaving the base immediately, and leaving the matter of the laboratory for higher authorities to handle. Unfortunately, the battle last night resulted in an explosion at the fuel depot, leaving them without enough fuel to leave. Furthermore, they are surrounded by terrorists along the way, and if they choose to walk without vehicles, death awaits them. Chris suggested blowing up the laboratory, but to everyone's surprise, as soon as he finished speaking, the monster lying on the bed suddenly came to life, and grabbed Mary, intending to kill her. Everyone made a tremendous effort to separate the two. At this moment, Chris, as the leader, stepped forward, and sacrificed himself by holding a hand grenade to eliminate the monster. With the situation reaching this point, everyone unanimously decided to destroy the laboratory. Finally, they arrived at the entrance of the laboratory by car, and just as they finished installing C4 explosives, they were about to leave. A monster appeared, and dragged Miles into a mine pit, but fortunately, Miles survived, and hid inside the laboratory. Mary listened to the voice coming from the walkie-talkie, and decided to go down and rescue him. After a moment of contemplation, the others also agreed. Afterward, they utilized the car's towing rope to create a makeshift elevator. Unexpectedly, while the elevator was descending, the towing rope suddenly loosened, causing the elevator to plummet rapidly. Fortunately, the elevator came to a stop in the last second. Everyone landed safely, and they proceeded into the interior of the laboratory. However, they made an unexpected discovery. At this moment, Miles learned that his teammates had come down, and he hurriedly rushed to meet them. However, he encountered a monster on the way. Meanwhile, the medic who stayed on the ground received some bad news. The higher-ups were planning to bomb the area where the laboratory was located in 20 minutes. The medic wanted to stop it, but due to poor signal transmission, he couldn't get through. He could only relay the message to the team members underground. The situation was critical, and they needed to escape as soon as possible. Just then, Miles ran out of the room with a monster chasing him. He performed a slide tackle, creating space for Mary and the others to shoot. The monster was gunned down on the spot. However, more and more monsters were converging towards their location. Without time to spare, the group quickly evacuated. and closed the laboratory doors. One soldier willingly stayed behind to block the entrance for everyone's safety. Meanwhile, the medic encountered a problem as terrorists appeared around the mine pit. He picked up a machine gun and unleashed a fierce barrage, temporarily repelling the terrorists. Inside the laboratory, everyone was frantically running for their lives, as more monsters appeared behind them. A female soldier stayed behind to buy time for everyone. She stayed behind to hold the line, but was tackled by a monster. The soldier quickly seized an opportunity to get up. She engaged in a fierce battle with the monster. In the end, the fierce soldier defeated the monster, but in the next moment, another monster appeared. By the time Miles arrived alone to rescue her, she had already sacrificed herself. Miles fought a fierce battle with the monster. Meanwhile, on the other side, Little Beard couldn't hold the door. As he let go, he accidentally triggered the bomb switch. Miles hid inside a laboratory cabinet and narrowly escaped. The monsters outside weren't as fortunate. All the monsters died. They watched as an explosion occurred inside. Mary and the others decided to leave first. However, they were unable to reach the medic. At that moment, the medic was engaged in close combat with terrorists. He finally managed to catch a breath of relief. The medic immediately activated the traction rope. Unexpectedly, the elevator below got stuck. The elevator started pulling the car downward. He wanted to go and shut it down. Unfortunately, the terrorists launched a new wave of attacks. The terrorists' attacks kept him occupied. Meanwhile, Mary and the others were in a dire situation. The elevator wouldn't ascend. More and more monsters emerged. Soon, they ran out of bullets. They were forced to resort to using melee weapons. They prevented the monsters from entering the elevator. In the midst of the chaotic battle, a team member unfortunately sacrificed their life. Only Mary and Abraham remained in the elevator cage. Meanwhile, the car was being continuously dragged into the mine pit. It eventually plummeted down. Mary luckily escaped unharmed. Soon after, Miles emerged from the laboratory cabinet and found Mary. They embraced and severed the rope. They returned to the ground. They rescued the medic who was about to be executed. The final 3 individuals departed from the bombing zone. As the missile descended, the laboratory was completely destroyed. The monsters inside were also eradicated in the process. The movie concludes at this point. The overall framework of the movie is quite good. However, the plot of the movie lacks some depth. The monsters that escaped the laboratory were not explained where they ultimately went. The movie also lacks a scene depicting the monsters attacking the terrorists. Due to the dim lighting in the movie, we couldn't discern some details within the movie. However, if you're bored and want to watch a movie, you might as well give it a try. If you enjoy my channel, please consider subscribing to it.